Hey Pisces, how's it going? I got some oracle messages for you here today. And what I saw for you in my meditation was like one of those classic alchemical mandalas. This one was a bird in one of those glass bottles or flasks that, like an alembic that you heat up with a wood fire underneath, or just some sort of fire. This one was, that wood fire that you would see in like a Renaissance or medieval era mandala. And the bird with spread wings inside of this bottle, and I think it was a pelican. I'm not sure, but it looked like a pelican. And the top of the opening of the bottle up at the top, so it had no cork or covering on it. And this pelican squeezed through the bottleneck and came out the top, and it was very unnatural. It shrunk and squeezed out and was freed from this bottle. Now these birds in bottles are part of the alchemical process. They're the symbols for the alchemical process. You'll have like a dove in a bottle, you'll have like a phoenix in a bottle, a pelican, things like this, and they represent different stages of spiritual awakening or spiritual development. The pelican represents when we have mastered the use of our etheric body. The etheric body is very closely related to the material body. It's almost material. So if the material is the grossest, most dense layer of reality, the etheric is the second grossest, second most dense. From there, we then have the astral, then the mental, the spiritual, the causal, and so on, subtler and subtler realities. But the ether is very closely related to physical reality. And it essentially has a lot to do with our metabolism, some people call it life force energy, or chi, or ching, ruach. It's what sort of energizes our chakras. It's just that vital force, those life forces that we use in our daily lives. It governs our autonomic functions in our body, all the things that we don't have to think about doing, like heartbeat and breathing, and all that stuff is governed by the etheric body, the ether. And it's strange, like the ether body, the pelican represents when we have mastered using the ether, when we can control it with our minds. And that's a pretty high stage of development, because it takes a lot of intelligence, a lot of spiritual power to be able to govern the lower spheres. Like, yogis who can control their heart rate or control their metabolism are very high level yogis. So like the lower something is in reality, the more material it is, the more complex it is. And the more spiritual it is, the simpler it is. So you can do really high spiritual practices dealing with just the spiritual world, and that's pretty easy. Then from those high realms of spirituality, then we can start to control our thoughts, and then from that, it's you can control your astral body and your emotions and instincts, which are a little bit more complex than thoughts. And then beneath that, we have the etheric body, which is even more complex than the astral. And then beneath the etheric, we have the material, which is extremely complex. Think about your cells metabolizing the food you eat, your body metabolizing the food you eat and turning it into useful energy and material for your body and all that, and all the division of molecules and stuff that our bodies do automatically without us thinking about it. And think about how complex those processes are and how much intelligence it would take to govern those sorts of processes. So there are very high spiritual beings and forces that deal with the lowest parts of reality. So the higher the spiritual intelligence, the lower parts of reality it works with, and it sort of meets in the middle. So, middle level spirits deal with middle level stuff. Low level spirits actually deal with high level stuff, which is why humans deal a lot with spiritual philosophy, because we're kind of low on this cosmic hierarchy, and it's simpler for us to deal with higher spiritual things. But higher spiritual things have it in the reverse, where they start dealing with lower stuff. And then a human being can be anywhere on this. So naturally we're kind of low down dealing with spiritual things. But we can graduate different levels, ascend the spiritual hierarchy, and begin working with lower parts of ourselves. And this is part of spiritual ascension. And working with the etheric body is very difficult. It takes a lot of ascetic practices. I'm sure you've seen those people who can, like, you know, use their chi pressure, as it's called in the modern world, and like move pieces of paper or move like pencils across a desk with just like bringing their hand really close to it. It's very common in Russian parapsychological studies. There are plenty of videos from the 60s and 70s of people who can do these things. People who can set pieces of paper on fire by just putting their hand close to it, and, you know, using the fire element with their willpower to do things like that, or to move a tennis ball around, a ping pong ball around, or whatever. And that's your etheric body basically doing those things. And it's not supposed to be free on its own. So I'm a little confused by this pelican squeezing itself out of this bottle and liberating itself, because the ether body on its own will just dissipate and die, essentially. Like when a human being or an animal dies, our physical body and etheric bodies just dissolve back into the world. You know, they just rot away and just dissolve. The astral and mental and spiritual, and those go on into different realms and do different things. But the ether and the material is kind of just like, it's just sort of the clay we play with in this world. It's not so much a part of our higher nature or our deeper selves, and it can't exist on its own. It just dissipates without a physical body, or without the spirit, without the mind, without the astral body to sort of constrain and give the ether body something to do. It's a lot like the physical body in that it'll dissolve and disappear. I was reminded of that Zen koan, that riddle, where you put a baby bird inside of a bottle and you can't break the bottle. So how do you get this bird out of the bottle without breaking it? As the bird grows, like, it'll be too big to get out of the bottle. So how do you break the bottle? Or how do you get it out without breaking the bottle? And the answer is you don't. You just feed it until it grows, and eventually it will break the bottle. So you didn't breach the rules of the riddle. You didn't break the bottle, you just fed the bird. The bird breaks the bottle when it's strong enough and ready to do it. You just have to keep it fed. And this is an analogy for spiritual development, where, you know, you can't take shortcuts. You have to just nourish your spirit in the way that it needs to be nourished through your spiritual disciplines and whatnot, and self-awareness training and all of that sort of stuff, and qigong and pranayama and whatever it is you do. And eventually your spirit breaks the bottle on its own and is liberated. And that's the phoenix bird in the alchemical mandala symbolism, where this came from. It's not the pelican that does it. The pelican first has to transform into a phoenix. These birds kind of transform into each other. And the phoenix is the final stage of this, where the phoenix breaks the bottle, and then you are spiritually liberated after all the other work has been achieved. So this seems like a premature slipping away of the etheric body in this vision, which is concerning. I don't know what that means exactly. I get the sense that there's like perhaps a shortcut that you're trying to take here in your spirituality. And shortcuts, especially in occult practices or yogic practices, are very, very risky, and it's inadvisable. And the I Ching hexagram I pulled for you was hexagram 50, or establishing the new, with the changing line there. That third line changes to not yet fulfilled. And this is very interesting, because this hexagram is not only named establishing the new, but some people call it the cauldron, or the sacrificial vessel. And it's the elements here are fire over wood that make up this hexagram. And here we have an image of a sacrificial vessel on top of a fire pit that is, cooking the sacrificial offerings. And oftentimes in ancient Chinese ceremonies, sacrificial vessels were broken to symbolize different sorts of things, like adopting children, or it's just like establishing a new government even, or there's so many things. Setting the foundation for a house, you would have this special vessel that you could break, and that would be like a liberating of a spirit to establish a new chapter of life. And this vessel didn't break in the vision I saw. It was the pelican squeezing itself out kind of supernaturally. And having this changing line here, establishing the new, not yet fulfilled, this has the idea of not taking the nourishment that's offered you. You're like at a feast table, but you don't want to eat the feast. You, for some reason, there's a reluctance to receive something that's being offered, receiving nourishment that's being offered. And it could be because there's some disharmony between you and some person, or maybe some disharmony within yourself, where you think you might not need something that you actually do need. And this is an obstruction on your spiritual path, on your spiritual development. And it has to be washed away and flushed out, whatever this obstruction is, so that you can see clearly your spiritual development in a different way. Now, when it says like washed away as if there's rainfall and then good fortune is guaranteed, I thought of baptism, and it doesn't necessarily have to be Christian baptism. I just mean spiritual purification or a rebirth. And I think imagine there's a sequence that you have to go through to develop certain spiritual powers, to develop our occult powers, if that's what you're looking to do. If you're just trying to be more spiritual and more devotional, that's fine. And there's really not a sequence of events for that sort of thing, or a sequence of practices. But if you're really trying to gain like those more occult magical powers, what you could call the siddha or the siddhi, there are certainly no shortcuts there, because that can be very dangerous if you're trying to become like a medium or something, and you don't want to do all the preparatory work. You just want to become one of those mediumistic, spiritualistic New Agers that just allow themselves to become possessed, and your personality blacks out and takes a back seat. Because you can do that. There are shortcuts where you can just remove your personality and your astral body from your physical body and allow it to become possessed by anyone. That's possible, and that's what most people do who want to become mediums, because all the preparatory work is extremely tedious and difficult to make sure that you don't have to set aside your own personality. You can be a medium with your full consciousness intact and being in complete possession of yourself. But there's a lot of preparatory work where you have to balance your personality, you have to balance the spiritual aspects of the 4 elements within yourself, you have to regulate all of these things, you have to learn how to accumulate vital forces and elemental forces and how to use them. You have to learn how to displace your astral body from your physical body properly while maintaining consciousness, and these things take years of practice. You could just take the shortcut though, and just skip to those last steps where you displace your astral body from your physical body without all that prep work that develops your consciousness, and you can basically just allow yourself to be possessed and kind of black out and not even remember the trans-channel session or the medium session. And in that case, the quality of your readings will be dubious at best. Who knows if it's the truth, if what you're saying is real. And there are other practices. It's not just being a medium, but it could be, as weird as it sounds, things like learning how to levitate, learning how to, make the air around you colder or warmer. All these sorts of occult powers that people talk about being possible to possess and wield. And to develop them is a long sequence of ascetic practices. And the first whole bunch of ascetic practices are very, very boring and very, very difficult and very, very time consuming. And this is why most people don't have these powers. You know what I mean? If it were easy, everyone would do it. And if you try to skip those first steps and go straight to the thing like, I want to throw a fireball, like pretty much all you're going to do is like give yourself an aneurysm, you know? Or you can just make yourself temporarily insane or something, or permanently insane. There are a lot of consequences on an unprepared nervous system to dealing with these massive amounts of vital forces, etheric forces, elemental forces, pulling them into your body without preparing it first is not good. You can cause all sorts of endocrine issues, neurological issues, and things like this. And this is why in the Eastern world, it's actually very common for people to develop neurological issues, like yogis and people like that, and to develop issues with their organs and things like that, because these yogis are looking for extreme shortcuts. And it's not advisable. And if there is some desire in you to be looking for spiritual shortcuts or occult shortcuts, don't take them. I know how tempting it can be, believe me. But you have to find joy in those small, tedious practices and understand that you're doing things step by step. In doing things step by step, victory is assured, is absolutely assured. By taking the time, having the commitment to these things, you will be one of the few who actually achieves it. Whereas everybody else who tries these shortcuts, and it's so common in the modern West, is all these spiritual shortcuts, especially since the 1960s, just so many people just want to take shortcuts. And we can see, you know, you can judge a tree by the fruit it bears. I'll just put it that way. We've got 70 years of history of this, 60 plus years of history of Westerners attempting spiritual shortcuts, and we all know how it works and how it doesn't for different people and why. I don't need to get into that. So don't take the shortcuts. And if it's an interpersonal issue because you have poor feelings toward the person who's teaching you, or maybe like you're reading a book by an author and you really like this book, but then you found out that this author was kind of a scumbag or something like that, and now you don't want to do it anymore. Or, something like soured this for you and you want to like try something in a different way. That's fine if you want to try it in a different way, but make sure it's just as thorough. Or the other option is like, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. If this teacher has left a bad taste in your mouth, or you don't like this teacher anymore for some reason, I don't mean to sound like an ass, but like get over it. Like get rid of that obstruction, like as if a good rainfall came. It's an emotional obstruction. It's a water-based obstruction, and you can flush it away with another emotion, with a better emotion, or an emotion that can dissolve it. And because it's very important that whatever this bad feeling is, or this obstruction, or this wish to take a shortcut, or this wish to radically overhaul what you're doing, it might not be, like, it might be a little petty. I might sound like an ass, I know, but it might be some petty issue that you just gotta kind of find a way around it, and don't ruin what you've been working on just because you're a little pissed off at the moment, or because you're a little frustrated or something like that. It's really important to stick to the sequence and the process. So just pay attention to that. You don't want your pelican to slip out of the bottle. That ain't right. That's not how inner alchemy works. If you're working with etheric energies and vital energies, maybe you're working with qigong, or trying to do some sort of thing with your qi, and that might be step 1 for you. That might be the first thing you heard of and the first thing you want to try. But that's really like step 12, and you're missing steps 1 through 11. You might be unaware that you're missing steps 1 through 11, and you're trying all this qi movement and this vital force accumulation. And either 1, best case scenario, you just don't see any results. Or 2, worst case scenario, you do damage to your nervous system. So neither of those options are very good. So find out what you're missing. Find out what sort of prep work you need to do. I would recommend reading someone like Franz Bardon and his Initiation into Hermetics as a primer, something like that, where they have something that has good step-by-step instructions that the author has also done and isn't just plagiarizing, but is speaking from experience. So find something that's like technical and step-by-step and just start at step one. So let's see. I'm going to pull some cards for you now, Pisces. What does Pisces need to know? I'm going to focus on some aspect of life here. So we are looking at the companion, which I use the symbol of those two intersecting circles, also called the vesica Pisces. How convenient. So, two intersecting circles. So here we have a person who is intertwined with you, perhaps. That's just one interpretation. And a good supportive person who might be crucial for your success in this. Or we have a part of yourself that needs to be integrated into your dominant personality, some hidden personality that needs to be integrated or looked at. Or just the idea of two worlds coming together, and you're in between them, and you're bringing these two worlds together. Perhaps the material and the spiritual that would go along with this is just learning how they're not so separate. You know, especially when you start working with vital forces, with the ether, that's when you really feel, oh, there is no real like dichotomy between matter and spirit. There's really no separation. When you start working with the ether, and the ether is sort of that glue between these two worlds, or the intermediary between these worlds, you realize like matter and spirit are intertwined with each other, and ether is the thing which intertwines them. So you're probably learning that, like you're probably seeing things more holistically, things that are more unified in your mind now, and you're not seeing the separation between matter and spirit, which is great. When you can start seeing spirit everywhere around you, integrated within all things, spiritual progress becomes more rapid and more thorough and more complete. So we have the Knight of Pentacles. That makes sense. You got to take the slow road. So yeah, the Knight of Pentacles. This guy is thorough. This guy is sure-footed. He takes his time, and he has a great deal of wealth in his hand. Whether it's material or spiritual or intellectual or supportive. But yeah, if maybe you have a friend who is like this, who has this sort of energy and can ground you and slow you down. Maybe that's the part of yourself that needs to be integrated, is like this Knight of Pentacles part of you that you have to pay attention to and utilize. You have to think, you have to be more sure-footed in this. You have to really focus on each step you're taking and take it correctly. And it's not a time to try and gallop ahead. It's a time to really take account of everything you're doing and why you're doing it and how to properly do it and the nice slow pace at which you should do it. You know, you can't rush through a meditation, you know what I mean? It takes as long as it takes. You can't rush through a ritual practice. It takes as long as it takes. And that pentacle he's holding, that could be this nourishment that you've been refusing, right? You haven't taken the most important part of what you've been working on, or you've ignored it, or it just seems like too much. It seems like it's too much nourishment. I don't need all that nourishment. I'm gonna have a big full belly, or something like that. Or maybe it doesn't taste quite good to you. Maybe you wanted, I don't know, mashed potatoes and gravy, but they gave you cranberry sauce and corn or something. I have no idea. And maybe you don't like those things, but you gotta eat your veggies. You know, you gotta do it, and take the time to learn exactly the steps you need to take. Write down in a notebook. Like if you get a good book that teaches you step by step the certain practices you have to take, I would rewrite those steps in a notebook, and that way you really commit them to memory and really take them seriously. I'm going to take another card for you. But yeah, the Knight of Pentacles is a really great card to come out on the companion here. It means that like you have someone with just a really good head on their shoulders, probably you, or if you have a good friend like that, or someone in your family like that, that's excellent, a coworker. But this is just someone who wants to see you succeed, is on the road to success, has achieved success already. You know, he's already got a pentacle and a scepter in his hand. Like he's already achieved something. And now he's like balancing that pentacle in his hand while he's riding a horse because he doesn't want to drop it. He doesn't want to waste it. He doesn't want to lose what he's got. So if you have done a lot of spiritual work in your life, it's important not to like fumble what you've accomplished already. Use it appropriately. Don't rush ahead trying to do things. Ooh. Analysis. So here we have some, I don't even know what these are, interesting hand tools. Or I've thought of those weights that are inside of grandfather clocks that help the mechanism stay in time. And that's another thing, like the correct timing, the correct pacing. You know, time travels as fast or as slow as it needs to, according to what needs to unfold in your life. You know, time flies when you're having fun. Time moves slowly when you're bored or stressed, or anticipating something. So if you're overly anticipating something or you're looking for results, time might slow down and it might feel like it's taking even longer. But if you go with it, you think, oh, if I do all these steps, it's going to take me forever. This could take me 5 years to develop this ability, or to do all these steps, to do all these practices. But there's a saying, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. So although it might seem to your intellectual mind that this is going to take a long time, when you actually decide to do it and begin doing it, you might actually see really rapid progress, or it might feel as though time is moving very quickly and working in your favor. And that could be the obstruction that needs to be washed away, is your perception of time might be somewhat flawed. You might imagine something's going to take a long time, and that you could theorize that it's going to take a long time, but in fact it's not going to. When you do what you have to do, it will actually go by quickly. And if you take the shortcut, it won't work at all. So you might want to be taking a shortcut because your perception of time is kind of freaking you out. And that shortcut looks very desirable because it will shorten the time frame. But in fact, attempting shortcuts will only lengthen the time frame. I'm just reminded of people who work so hard to avoid work. They come up with all these schemes and all these things, and they do all this stuff to avoid doing something when it would have been 10 times easier to just do the damn thing. You know what? You know those types of people? They're funny. I'm sometimes one of those types of people where it's like, I really don't want to do this thing, but if I do this and that and that and that and that and this and that, I can avoid doing that. When it's like, by the time I do all that circumspect nonsense, I would have finished the damn thing I didn't want to do in the first place. All right, Pisces. I'm going to pull one last token for you. One thing to round out this reading. Yeah, analysis. That goes well with the Knight of Pentacles, is just thinking it all through. What does Pisces need to know here? These two, they're both coming out. Oh, cool. I don't think I've pulled these yet for anybody. So we've got the planetary symbol for Jupiter and the number 8. And we have the ascetic and the number 10. This guy, I call him the ascetic. You see, he's got a nose, his eyes are closed, and his third eye is ablaze. So here, yeah, your companion might be a spirit guide, that Jupiter energy that's like, I'm here to help you, and I help those who help themselves. And this ascetic, like this could be you, this could be your spirit guide, this is like your energy together, or this teacher that you might have had a falling out with, or something like that. But yeah, this is like, this is you. This is taking the proper path. It's difficult. You know, the bright way looks dim. The fast way looks slow. The progressive way looks retrograde. So even though it might look retrograde, it might look slow, it might look difficult, it might look dim, it's actually the correct path. And that's something that's very difficult to see a lot of the time. But we have this Jupiter energy that's like But if you do it, I will open these doors, I will give you the gifts, I will give you the support, I'll give you everything you want, but you have to walk through the door. You have to open the door. I'm not going to open it for you. I'm not going to walk the path for you. You have to do this stuff. So you have so much support. You know, Jupiter coming out on the companion here, and the ascetic coming out on the companion. Like, success is assured if you can get over this little hump or this whatever this obstruction is. Just wash it away. See if you can forgive it, forget it, move on from it, because you will unlock an abundance of resources that will take you through this next stage and will help you develop all the gifts and things you're trying to develop for yourself. And your third eye will open. Like, you will see all the things you want to see. You will see your ideal self, and it will become more and more of a reality every single day. That future self that you wish you were now, like, it will become now, you know? Eventually that now will get here, and probably a lot faster than you think. However, you can't rush it, and you can't anticipate it. You just have to do what's necessary to get there. So Pisces, I think that's where the Oracle and I are going to leave it here for you today. I appreciate you stopping by. I always appreciate when you hang out with me. I wish you all the best, and I'll see you next time.